evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Katie Wesney. You know what I hear all the time? Katie, I know I should be doing more with my money, but honestly, it all feels overwhelming. If that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. Here's the thing, building wealth doesn't have to be complicated. The most powerful strategies are actually pretty straightforward once you know what they are. Tonight, we're cutting through the noise to focus on what actually works. Whether you're just starting out, kicking yourself for not starting sooner, or already on track but want to make sure you're doing it right, the next 45 minutes are about giving you clear, actionable strategies you can actually use. We'll cover the principles that matter, explore options that make sense for your life stage, and help you create a plan that builds wealth while still letting you enjoy life today. Because what's the point if you can't live meaningfully along the way? For those catching the recording tomorrow, these principles work just as well on replay. Let's dive in and talk about building something significant for you and the family you care about most. If you have any questions, please submit them in the box below. My amazing producer, Jess, will collate what you've submitted previously and also what you ask in the webinar, and I'll answer them at the end. So what we'll cover tonight: why you want to grow wealth, harnessing your own tendencies for success, defining how much you need for retirement. That's a really important anchor point in terms of your financial strategy. We'll talk about wealth building principles, creating a personalized wealth plan, adjusting your plan for life as it happens, and as I said, we'll round that out with Q&A. And you might be thinking, in terms of this session, what am I going to get out of it? So I'm going to go through principles I think you should execute on going forward. What I won't be doing is providing personalized, regulated financial advice. The presentation is provided for informational purposes only. I would dearly love to give you personalized advice, but to do so, you would have to come and see us. And I've got a wee offer at the end for you if you would like to take advantage of that. So again, I'll go through that at the end. And you might be thinking, who am I to give advice to you around how to be good with money? So I've been at Enable Me for the last decade. I'm a chartered accountant. I trained at KPMG many moons ago, and I'm also a qualified financial advisor. I've run and sold my own successful business. I am a respected media columnist, and I just know just about everything that you need to do to get ahead. And we want to be super targeted in our delivery tonight, so there'll be some polls along the way. And the first poll is, how close are you to retirement? So if you just select the one that is most relevant to your situation, are you already retired, 5 years until retirement, 10 years until retirement, or 20 years or more? So if you could take a few seconds to fill that in, that just means I can craft my presentation thereafter. Amazing, thank you. So I love that. Quite an even split, but the vast majority of us, we have runway. And again, I don't care when you start, it just means you do start, but the longer you have, the more options you have. So again, I'll try and target each and every one of you tonight. And so just to be clear, why should you prioritize wealth? Wealth equals options and peace of mind. It is not about being greedy. It means that you can stop work on your terms, do what you love, not what you must. It means that you can support your kids, leave a legacy. That's really important for me. I've got 3 teenagers, and it helps you build stability in an unstable world. And there's lots of things you can't control about your wealth. We're going to talk about what you can in this session today. And obviously, sorting retirement is the big one. Wealth must fund retirement. End of. So I think often people have a sense of they're behind. I would like to know if you are feeling worried or behind. You are not alone. 44% of Kiwis feel prepared for retirement. 54% of Kiwis worry about money on the daily. 70% of Kiwis expect they need to work past retirement age. I do not accept these stats. It is part of why I do what I do. So if you're feeling worried, you're not alone, but what do we do to make things better? And what we do to make things better is we're more strategic, we have a plan, and we understand the levers we can pull, and we pull them sooner rather than later. And the great thing is you get to decide what financial success looks like for you based on your goals, your values, and where you are in life. And in my experience, for most of my clients, their goals are anchored to two things. Firstly, they want more financial freedom. They just want more choice around the work they do, how long they work for, and they want more security. They do not want to worry about money. And in my mind, there are pillars to what we anchor any financial plan to make sure that you have a really strong base. So no matter what happens, we can still make this work. And retirement planning might be the goal, but not step one. So the bottom layer, really critical foundation. Wealth is not built on poor money habits or messy debt. We've got to fix those cash flow habits, structure first, and you don't skip steps. This is on the concrete slab. It might seem boring, but it absolutely is essential to make sure that you land where you do and where you need to, and you really maximize your position. And we're going to talk about these things tonight. Really critically, you need to understand your starting point, and you have to understand that capacity piece. And often this is one of the hardest things for you to do independently. So it's around, what is that cash flow piece? Cash in, cash out. What are you capable of generating from a cash flow perspective? Let's understand any short-term debt you have. If you have a mortgage, lots of my clients come to me and they haven't quite bought their first home, or they have a mortgage sizable, or some of them are mortgage free and they want to know what's next. And we want to understand, well, what is your savings investment balance? And then we figure out, well, what are your goals? What is our anchor point going forward? And what is the time frame we have to achieve them? Because some of these strategies we're going to talk to tonight are not available infinitely. So again, we'll talk to that, but for most of us, we're on the clock in terms of what we can do. Does that mean it's impossible? Certainly not, but we do need to be more strategic. And you've got that, have that mindset of, well, what can I do? And then execute on that, because it's great to know all the stuff. I love that you've come here tonight, but you've got to anchor yourself to action thereafter. And again, knowing your behavioral tendencies means that you can stick to a plan better. And I'm going to unpack that with you now. So in terms of financial success, for us, 80% comes down to behavior, 20% comes down to strategy. At Enable Me, we want to marry the two. So each of you will have different money personalities. We broadly categorize them into three classifications. So for me, I'm more of a shopper. I derive emotional satisfaction from shopping. My husband is a saver. He derives emotional satisfaction from saving. And for a plodder, neither here nor there with money. So they don't particularly enjoy spending money, but they're not super great at saving. So you will have a tendency, your partner will have a tendency. Knowing that means that we understand how to craft your plan to ensure you achieve your goals. So often a shopper with a shopper, they look great, but they're not necessarily making the financial progress they deserve. For shoppers, we need to ensure they have goals that are sexy enough and motivating enough for them to try harder. Having a saver in the mix absolutely is an advantage. You cannot say it is not. You've just got to pair it with a great strategy, because yes, you might be good at saving, and accumulating cash, but you're not necessarily great at growing it and taking a bit of risk. And obviously, if you have a saver and a shopper in a relationship, there's a little niggle around money, cute at the beginning, less so as you grind on. And throw a plotter in the mix, they're just not making the progress they deserve. And for each and every one of you, you'll be in a different cash position. So for the vast majority of my clients, they are floating. They are fine, but they are not making the financial progress they deserve. Some people come to me and they are sinking. If they're sinking, what's coming in is not covering what's going out, so they're slipping backwards. If you cannot repay your credit card in full, I believe you are sinking. Lots of people think that they're floating if they're paying the minimum amount. If you can't repay that in full, I think that you are sinking because you can't correct past overspending. And again, I don't care where you are. I'm just trying to jog you through these as fast as possible. What we're trying to do is get you to flying, which is saving 15 to 20% of your net income towards investing, paying off debt, etc. So that's where we need to get you. And your approach to risk will tell me the strategies that you're willing to take. And often I find you do have a natural tendency, but knowing what needs to be done means you can be braver in taking on risk, acknowledging that generally speaking, the biggest opportunity cost is that of doing nothing. And part of this process for lots of my clients are, well, let's take that off the table and execute on a really clinical plan that gets you to where you need to be. Because again, in terms of risk, you can be really safety conscious, but there's generally, again, a cost around that. Lots of Kiwis love term deposits, even if they have a mortgage, which makes zero sense to me. And again, we need to make sure that your money works as hard as possible for you, because if it's not keeping up with inflation, you are banking a loss. Lots of people are also really adventurous, in for a penny, in for a pound. But again, we know what works, and that is what we lean into. And likely you are not a dreamer because you're here tonight, but the dreamers think that the universe will provide. They won't. So, in terms of where you're at the moment, what do you think your main obstacles are? Do you think it's around financial knowledge, confidence to act? Is it you're not earning enough in terms of income? Do you think you're spending too much? And if you think you're spending too much, the vast majority of Kiwis think that in terms of cost of living crisis, overwhelmed by options. I think that's a challenge in terms of the democratization of financial information, GPT, a plethora of podcasts, writing, etc. It's catching what is relevant for you, or do you think you've left it too late? What do you think your main obstacle is in terms of achieving wealth creation and retiring comfortably? Interesting. So for vast majority of people, it's knowing what to do. And I think that kind of feeds into that overwhelm. Often we've got lots of options. What is the one that we lean into that is going to be the differentiator in terms of results? Confidence to act, very common. But I think if you have good knowledge, you have a plan, you have goals that align to your values, you are more confident to act. Often working with somebody independent really helps in terms of a coach as well. And 18% left it too late. I will challenge you on that. It is never too late. My youngest client is 24 and my oldest client is 84. There's always things we can do, but the earlier we start, the more options that we have. So that's really useful. And I hope looking at that means that you feel less alone. And a fundamental foundational pillar is you need to ensure that you have a really solid cash engine behind you. How do you increase the money that is left over every month? Formula is simple: money in minus money out. We maximize the ins, minimize the outs. How? We have a plan. we track it. That is really important. And you can track your spending through most bank websites. Generally speaking, it just shows you that you're quite good at spending money. What's useful to me and my clients is understanding, well, what do you want to do? What are you actually doing? And how does that drive your plan thereafter? And you've got to make sure that you have sustainable systems, which means that you do what needs to be done when it's hard and you're tired and you're bored and you're hungry. And sometimes that is as simple as having a great bank account structure whereby you introduce friction, remove access from some spending, just have a day-to-day spending account and automate as much as possible. Non-negotiable for me and my clients is that we eliminate friction. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. All of these things combined are all those 1% shifts that help you create money left over, of which you can increase your pace of progress, whether that be paying off a mortgage faster, buying an investment property, investing in funds. And that fritter piece, we use it often, the terminology at Enable Me. And fritter is in essence unintentional spending. On average, we fritter about 15% of our net income, a little bit of overspending, a lot of paying too much interest to the bank. And part of that challenge is that we have super profitable banks in New Zealand, some of the most profitable in the world in terms of interest rates and fees. And I like to use this example with my clients. So for me, who loves coffee, my first cup of coffee of the morning, I am riding that caffeine wave, lots of bang for my buck. Second cup, not quite as good as my first, but still pretty good. Third cup, I tend to feel a bit sick. For my optimal level of coffee drinking is 1.5 cups. Anything over than that, I'm doing it for the sake of it. So again, main areas of fritter for my clients: mortgage structure, we're paying way too much interest. Please don't. Extra supermarket trips, takeaways, utilities and insurances, not reviewing them regularly. It's a lazy tax in my opinion. Subscriptions, you sign up for them, don't use them. Bank fees, and also not being in the right KiwiSaver fund. All kind of like having your money going into a bucket that has holes. My job and my coach's job is to find that inefficiency piece and put it to better use. And I got lots of questions about this next slide prior, and I'll answer your questions at the end. But it is a non-negotiable for me as part of your plan. If you have a home mortgage, you must be on track to get rid of it. Crush that mortgage. Lots of people in New Zealand anchor their mortgage structure to paying the least amount of interest. And of course, I want you to pay the least amount of interest, or they anchor it to the bank that they're with. So they're like, right, I know what I'll do. I'll change banks, I'll get a cash back. Great. But again, that's the thing that's going to make this work, because I'm going to secure a lower interest rate. I will tell you now, it does not. What matters the most is the pace, not the rate. And I'm going to walk that through in terms of a wee example. So the difference early repayment can make. Average first home mortgage of 550,000 on a mortgage rate of 4.99%. So the interest you will pay over 30 years is 510,000. If you can, if you can pay that off in 15 years, you pay 231,000 in interest. For me and my clients, I'm trying to get you mortgage free in 10 years or less. You pay 148,000. Potential savings just on pulling that lever of paying off the mortgage quicker is 362,000 of interest you do not have to pay back to the bank. And I don't know about you, but for me and my clients, I'd much rather that be in your back pocket in terms of options than the bank's. And it's often useful to see this trajectory. And to be clear, this is not what everyone else is doing. On average in New Zealand, people buy their first home at about 35-ish, and it takes them 30 years to pay off that mortgage. So that's what everyone else is doing. That is not what my clients have been doing for the last decade. So the do nothing retirement trajectory, which is a bit bleak, if I'm honest. And again, this is what we're rallying against. This is not your default position, but this is the default position of most New Zealanders. And I look at it and it just makes me cross. So for most Kiwis, they get mortgage free at 65, whilst great, it just means that they do not have time to save enough for retirement. Average Kiwi saver in here lasts you to 69 in this example, living a good life. Pretty short rate life, if you ask me, which means that there is a gap between 69 and 90 that we would have liked to have plugged from wealth creation in terms of having another property, paying off the mortgage faster, investing in funds. So that gap is what we focus on in terms of strategy, and everyone's different, and that's really important in terms of getting personalized financial advice. I'm talking about fundamental principles, but what is right for you and your family in terms of where you're at. And lots of people ask us, as part of that retirement planning and wealth creation strategy, is KiwiSaver still worth it? Absolutely. It's deducted from your pay before you see it if you're employed. You get free money from your employer, amazing, and it includes some free money from the government for some. Obviously, there's been some changes around that, but I cannot emphasize enough, it shouldn't be your only option for retirement savings. For most people, it is very unlikely to provide all the funds you need. Most of you will have a gap. First things first, in my mind, is we understand, well, what is that gap? Because that tells me the strategy that we should lean into. And when we put money into KiwiSaver, great, we can get a good return for most. It just means that it's trapped until 65, which is really helpful in terms of retirement. For lots of my clients, though, they're ambitious and they have goals in terms of having flexibility earlier. So again, we need to be really targeted as to how KiwiSaver fits in to that broader picture. Really important, but how does that fit into the complex web of your strategy into the future? So that KiwiSaver, great foundation, but not a complete retirement plan. And again, we have to be regularly reviewing your goals and how you are tracking to understand what else you should be doing. And again, just illustrating the effects of early mortgage repayment. 59% of Kiwi mortgage holders are experiencing mortgage stress. So I don't take this lightly, but it re-emphasizes to me that you have to have a good mortgage structure and strategy. So in this example, they get mortgage free at 55 versus 65. And there's no tricks around this. It just means that you can save more, right? Because you're not paying the mortgage, which means your money lasts you longer. So for you to live your version of a happy life, you run out of money at 80 versus 69. All about giving yourself runway and options. And critical for everyone that they have a robust wealth creation strategy. And that brings together lots of different asset types and a hold sell strategy that provides cash flow to meet your financial goals. And I see this as one of our differentiators. We are agnostic in terms of if you invest in property and funds. I could care less. It is what will serve you best in the context of your plan and your goals. And just to reiterate, 60% of Kiwis haven't thought about how much they'll need for retirement. So again, we're going to think about that together in the next section. So what do you currently invest in now? I'm just going to do a quick poll. KiwiSaver, investment properties, shares, managed funds, term deposit, high interest savings, or I'm not investing at the moment. So if you could let me know, I'd really appreciate that. I'm going to take a swig of water because of this pesky cough that I can't get rid of all winter. Those are the most common investment strategies for Kiwis. So What are our results? So 94% are in KiwiSaver, amazing. 41% in investment property, awesome. 41% in shares, a little bit of managed funds, term deposits, yeah, that old chestnut. 53%, high interest savings, 35%, or not at all. And again, I love for my clients that they have a really good cash buffer, really important. But it's again, you can be clever around where that sits. Could that be offsetting debt if you have a mortgage, or could that be invested productively as well? And again, we leave no stone untouched. And the right option for you, honestly, just depends on the problem you're looking to solve. What are we aiming for, and what is your time frame? We'll go through the pros and cons quickly. So, pros and cons of term deposits. They offer safety and predictability, but come with trade offs. They're good for stability, but not for high growth. Inflation is an important consideration. Your returns might not keep pace. Think about your financial goals. Do term deposits fit into your overall strategy? And that's the thing you need to be thinking about. And if you have a home mortgage, I really challenge the fact that you would have a term deposit, because you will always pay more interest in debt than you receive in savings. And again, that's about being clever around your strategy. So we'll talk about the pros and cons of managed funds. I really like managed funds. Lots of my clients invest in managed funds. I invest in managed funds. They allow for diversification and professional management, but fees can impact returns. So we want to be really careful in terms of assessing what is the right fund for you. There's a range of options from conservative to aggressive to suit different investors. And remember, it's when you might need to access these funds in terms of what fund type is correct for you. And it's really important to balance risk and reward. Higher returns come with greater ups and downs and volatility. And consider your investment timeline. If you need to access those funds and retirement is imminent and you need that to fund your lifestyle, well, then you've got to really think about risk and when you might need them, because they can't drop when you need to access them. So these are the things you need to be considering in the context of your plan. Investment property. I have property. Lots of my clients have investment property. The beauty around property, if I'm really honest with you, is it gives you the ability to leverage, and that gives you a bigger base to work from. And again, you're a little bit on the clock in terms of access to leverage or funding from the bank, because the bank again doesn't have an infinite appetite to lend you money. So there's a window of time where you can execute around property. It offers stability, rental income, and growth potential. But again, it's not as liquid as other investments. You can't sell a quarter of a house to go on holiday or fix the roof. The higher entry cost can be offset by leveraging your home equity, making it more accessible for homeowners. I really like that. Obviously, due diligence is absolutely essential, and you've got to consider that financing options and your longer term strategy. Lots of people focus on the acquisition of property. For us, it's about the acquisition and the hold strategy around property. Again, we need to marry the two. And plainly speaking, if your retirement gap is greater than 300,000, you're likely going to need to use leverage to bridge it. And again, we example of that, no tricks around this. You could have you've got 160,000 to invest. You invest that in a managed fund, growth rate 6%, return of 9,600. If you use that 160,000 and the bank's money to buy an $800,000 property, at 6%, you get a return of 48%. And again, that is the beauty around property, is that you've acquired a bigger asset that goes up in time. Really important in terms of any strategy, but you will understand the right one and what is that decumulation strategy around that. And for me and my clients, we work incredibly hard to build up our asset position. Really important to protect your assets if you're considering leaving a legacy. You've worked hard for your nest egg, as I said, so ensure you have the right protections in place. Relationship property agreements and a will protect your children so that you don't end up disinheriting them accidentally. And they can say a partner got remarried and they passed, the new partner may inherit the full estate, bypassing your children from a previous relationship, unless you've updated your will to include your children. So again, super important in terms of making sure that you have wills, enduring powers of attorney, and those relationship property agreements are robust in terms of division of assets, etc. And this is really important to me, that we pass down values that will help future generations get ahead, not just in inheritance. Lots of people ask me, well, what's the best thing I can do for my kids? And I always say, well, sort yourself out. That gives you more ability to help them. But more importantly, you teach them the rules of the game and they do what you do. Super important. And for me, I intend to leave a legacy for my children, all going well. Include it in your wealth building plan. Only help others once you have covered your own retirement expenses. Super important. Lots of people we work with would like to help their children, but they also don't want to leave themselves short. So it's understanding, again, what could I potentially leave and how does that fit in the wider context of my plan? Oxygen mask on first. They have time, you likely have less time. So let's be pragmatic, set expectations and communicate your wishes. Really important. Talk about it. Trust for protecting your beneficiaries. That can be super useful in lots of cases. And consider common scenarios and how they fit into your plan, e.g., retirement villages, etc. And again, everything has to be structured so that you and your family are protected. And as I said, just to reiterate, we need to ensure we have a duty of care to protect you as part of this. You need a will, power of attorney, potentially a trust, and a medical directive and a legal will. Super important. So in terms of accelerating your financial progress, what do you think would help you? A one-on-one tailored coaching session with someone like myself, listening to more of these webinars, tracking your spending, listening to financial podcasts, reading books or other. And if you think other, please pop that in the chat. And sorry, we're just missing a word there. What do you think would accelerate your financial progress? So if you could just pop that in there. You've got as many as you like. Yeah. For, and I think that's really brave to say. For the vast majority of people, it's actually, and this is very non-Kiwi because we love to DIY our finances. We're just not that great at it, if I'm honest with you. And I think talking to an expert, understanding that capability, understanding the options available to you means you do better, you're braver, and you get results over a shorter time frame. Love that you'd like to listen to more webinars. Great. Tracking your spending, super important in the context of a wider plan. Lots of people love listening to financial podcasts. But I cannot emphasize enough, and I hope you are thinking about this at the back of your mind. Knowing and doing are two different things. Knowing what to do means absolutely nothing if you don't do what needs to be done in the time frame that you should. And that is what I'm encouraging you to do as an output of this webinar. What are the things you could be doing better to make sure you and your family have a better financial future? And everyone's situation is different. Your plan should be tailored. This is not about having an average amount. For me, the anchor point of any financial plan is let's figure out together, what does a good life look like to you? What does it cost you? Because that is the thing we need to facilitate when you don't work, and we need to grow that asset position so that it feeds that thereafter. Really important, and everyone is different. If you can leverage, likely you should. End of. Investment success comes from time in the market, not chasing perfect timing. Lots of people say to me, well, I'll think about all of this when there's a change in government, when interest rates are lower, when inflation isn't so scary, when I have job security. The stars never align. You start where your feet are, and then you just take the next right step, and the next right step, and the next right step. But you have to start. And starting isn't about gathering copious amounts of knowledge, it's anchoring yourself to action and what is right for you and your family. And I love this quote from the famous Warren Buffett: with any investment plan, time in the market is far better than timing the market. And a wealth plan should never be set in concrete. If it was, it becomes quickly irrelevant to you. It needs to be flexible enough. So as life flexes, your plan flexes, and you need to make sure that you are reviewing it really regularly. And again, how someone like myself could help it enable me. We assess your current financial situation to identify strengths and weaknesses. We can help you articulate those financial goals, whether it's getting onto the property ladder, getting debt free, or investing, helping your kids. We can set the right course so you can enjoy the ride. And I think lots of people think that when they work to a plan, they'll be miserable. In my experience, it's the exact opposite. You remove guilt around spend and you can live your best life. That is a great plan, and that's what we need to anchor yourself to. We understand your natural spending and saving tendencies. This is not making you who you're not. It's understanding, well, what are the great things about your personality? And let's lean into that. It's finding that annual surplus. If you tell me that everything that's coming in is being sucked out, unacceptable, we find that surplus for you to move forward. Got to craft that personalized strategy that aligns to your risk appetite. Again, everyone's different. And you've got to ensure you can confidently pursue your financial dreams and navigate the storms. Have a good buffer, but you have to take action. And I think often that independent financial sounding board: what if I did this? What does it look like? What if I did that? What does it look like? You still steer the ship, but in good conscience in terms of consequences. And part of my job is to have a longer line of sight than my clients. That is my whole job. So, our team, we've got 20 plus advisors nationwide. They're exceptional. We're here ready to help you maximize your true financial potential. And on the next screen, we've got a special offer for you to have one of those amazing tailored chats. So there you have it. The roadmap is right in front of you. But here's the truth: knowing what to do and actually doing it are two entirely different things. You can have all the best strategies in the world, but they're useless if they stay theoretical. There's never a perfect time to start. Not when you have more money, not when the market settles, not when life gets less busy. The perfect time was yesterday. The second best time is today. Here's what I know after years of helping people build wealth: the difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't knowledge, it's action. It's having a clear plan and someone to help you execute it properly. That's why tonight only I'm offering something special. Book a 90-minute wealth assessment with me or one of my coaches. We'll look exactly where you are, where you need to be, and create your specific roadmap to get there. Normally this costs $400. If you book tonight, scanning that QR code will just get discount it down to $149. If you're watching a recording, we'll still give you a discount, but that will be $249 after tonight. And tonight is Wednesday, the 24th of September. So scan the QR code on your screen right now to secure your spot. Don't let another year slip by wondering what if. Your future self will thank you for the decision you make in the next few minutes. So I'm going to hand over to Jess. We had some great questions submitted prior, and we'll see if we've had any questions submitted during our session together tonight.
Thank you so much, Katie, and it's so great that the Wi-Fi held together for this webinar. So the one
Outside, storming.
So the first question that came through live, I'm curious, what about the strategy of not buying a house when you're young, instead going hard on investing in funds and then purchasing a modest house later, mortgage free?
Mm. And again, lots of different options. I think that taking property out of the equation means you have to work harder and longer because you're not leveraging. So I always use this example. And again, I'm not saying that you buy your first home. Maybe it is an investment property. Lots of my clients do that. But you have to acknowledge and really understand this as you craft your plan. Say if you had 100,000, you could invest that in funds. You could get an amazing return on that, say 10%, or you could take that 100,000 as a deposit on a $500,000 asset. You get gains on 500 versus 100. That is the beauty around property, and that leverage piece accelerates the pace at which you make progress. So I'm not saying that's the only thing you do, but you are leaving money on the table if you don't do that as early as you can, if I'm honest. Good question, Jess.
Thank you so much. This one's a really good question. So, in terms of growing your wealth and leaving a legacy, what would you have done differently when you first started?
Such a good question. Simple. I would have bought property sooner and bought more of it. Starting early makes everything easier and gives you options down the track. Leverage is one of the most beautiful mechanics of personal finance, which is exactly what makes property so compelling as a wealth building tool. So, if I was in the same position as the viewer in terms of starting out, I would have bought property sooner and more of it.
Nice one. Any tips for people who are starting later in life, for example, 50 years old? Like many, I wish I'd started sooner, but here we are.
Time goes so quicker. You're like, how am I? How am I this age? You're in good company. Everyone wishes they'd started earlier, so don't think that there's something unique about you. The key now is surgical precision. Have a crystal clear plan, understand exactly what you're aiming for, and execute without getting distracted. If your retirement shortfall again is bigger than 350K, you're likely going to need leverage, probably another property to help bridge that gap. So that would be my focus for you.
Great answer. Um, how do you recommend balancing investment strategies that maximize long-term wealth with this desire to also enjoy life meaningfully in the present without compromising on either goal?
Such a good question, hey? And to be honest, I think you need both. Otherwise, what's the point in this whole exercise? I think the anchor of any solid plan is knowing what a good life looks like to you and what it actually costs without judgment. Plans built on deprivation fail because no one sticks to them with all the will in the world. And you figure out your number, you respect it, then you channel everything else as smartly as possible towards wealth creation. And that gets you where you need to be.
Thank you. Is it better to put off all my extra money into my mortgage rather than start investing?
Mm, I think I think the sweet spot really depends on where you are in life, your age, what you're paying in interest, and how close retirement is looming. The clever move, don't make it an either or decision. I think balance is your friend here. Chip away at debt while building assets, especially as retirement gets closer on the horizon. That would be my advice.
Thank you. And I have a mortgage on both my owner occupied and investment properties. Should I also invest in the share market or focus on paying off the mortgage on those?
Mm. This is such good questions, Steph. Um, so here's the hierarchy that makes sense. So we tackle any non-deductible debt first. That's usually your family home, since you can't write off the interest. For investment properties, it's more nuanced. Most of my clients follow a smart sequence, so they knock out that home mortgage first, then they get their investment debt down to where it is cash flow neutral, so it's not costing them anything. We try and untangle any cross guarantees. That's super important in terms of flexibility, and that maximum flexibility to either add another property to the portfolio or branch out into managed funds. Every situation is unique. So again, we link that back to your goals, capacity, and time frame. But that's generally the ordering we look at.
Perfect. And then we'll just finish off with with the last question, and it's just going back to the wills, because I guess we touched on that in the last part with the estate
Yeah.
planning and having a will. Um, but I guess there's a few questions, just wanting a little bit more information around that. Could you just provide a little bit more detail?
I cannot encourage you enough. Just get a will, go to your local lawyer. It is not a costly exercise. They will walk you through it. It is very stock standard, or there are really good online wills available. Jess, what do we usually recommend in terms of online wills?
We partner with Footprint.
Right. So just do it. 50% of New Zealanders don't have a will. Just do it. If there's nothing else you do in this webinar, which I dearly hope there's lots of things that you action after this webinar, get a will. Don't make it too hard. Go to a local lawyer, particularly if there's some complexities, or you can do that online version through Footprint.
Nice. Thank you so much, Katie. We've kind of run out of time, but I think you've covered off all the questions. So I'll leave
Amazing.
it to you to close.
Great. So I really hope you enjoyed the session. I was delighted to give it. And I really encourage you to be brave, take action. We'd love to see you for a session. Do it tonight. Take care.